Yeah.
And that's what C.J. Daniels, I imagine, was also pitched on while he was recruited, not just, hey, here's quote-unquote $300K, come on. Like, they still had to sell him on the vision of what he could do at LSU. And don't get it twisted, LSU needed some wide receiver help. They needed some depth at some points, because now you look at the room and it feels like what? Kyron Lacey outside, C.J. Daniels on the other side, and
Aaron
then
Anderson.
who'd you get from Mississippi State?
Xavier Thomas.
Yes. So the two of the three guys that you might see out there on your first game against USC would be two transfer portal guys.
Chris Hilton.
You would still see a Chris Hilton and Anderson. Like you say, you still have talent. Don't get me wrong, but you needed some. I feel like they wanted to go get some experience.
I just don't. I don't see them going into the season next year and like starting somebody who hasn't been here. Like Chris Hilton's been waiting his turn, and he had a good bowl game. So I would think going into spring, fall camp, into the season, I would think they would give Chris Hilton the most chances to like be a starter, to solidify his place in the rotation at
I've
least.
heard really good things about Kyle Parker.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know Cortez Hankton likes him a lot.
Right. He was right back to work after the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what Cortez even tweeted about it.
I saw something about P.J. Woodland, too, hearing a lot about him being just a standout in workouts. He's on campus already.
He's a DB, though. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I've just been hearing a lot about just newcomers and people who have been stepping up on the current team. We talked about recruiting, but people on the current team. P.J. Woodland is a name that's been standing out in workouts and things that the team have been doing.
And that's where I'm starting to turn the corner a little bit on the defensive backs room. Like, I know we were super how do you figure out, how do you fix it, who do you play? It feels like going into 2024, you have a little bit more of at least a baseline of a strategy with Corey Raymond coming in, and you know what you're going to run defensively, and the players know that this is going to look a little bit different, because it's going to answer the question of talent versus scheme that we had all year last year of, can the players not run this, or is it something that the coach wants to do to, this is all we can do with these guys? Because it feels like you never got a clear answer as to why the defense just wasn't good. Because if you're bringing back a lot of these guys,
they weren't playing the right guys.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like
that's what I'm saying. They're going to answer a lot of questions.
Enough people now that are in the building that are part of the new coaching staff that you're like, what do you think about your personnel? And you're like, I mean, the answer is like, we got players. I mean, LSU has players. It was not as much the personnel as it was maybe made out to be. Mm-hmm. Or look, in areas that they struggled personally, defensive back, it was not even competitive. But all in all, they had players where they could compete and not be the worst defense of all time. Right? And a lot of that was what this show, other shows, people were pounding and saying, play the right people. Play the people in the right positions. What is the issue? I mean, like, you go out there, you make the same mistakes. You have the same guys out of position. You miss the same tackles week in, week out. Play the right guys. And it just never clicked. I mean, it didn't work. It didn't work, man. It didn't work.
Andrew Messina asked about Shelton Sampson. How's that?
I mean, Sampson's on a good trajectory. I think you just got to earn trust.
Yeah.
Right? Like playing time in sports is it comes down to, can you be trusted? Right? Like, I mean, you think the NBA is ever going to trust Jaylen Brown to go out there on an all-star weekend to do something like that promotes the game? I mean, what he did to the dunk contest is
criminal.
So disrespectful to all of what goes into the weekend, into the game. If I'm the NBA, I'm looking at Brown and saying, I don't trust you in those environments anymore. I'm not putting you out there. That's how coaches look at players, right? Like, you can come practice as hard as you want. You can show up first in the building. You can do all your rehab, watch your film. If you get out on the floor during the game and you trip over yourself, or you're not where you're supposed to be, or, John Emery versus Florida in in 2019, right? I mean, you can look the part, you can have the 5 stars, you can play on this team, but if you don't know what you're doing,
can't play.
You can't play. If Burrow doesn't trust you, if Insminger doesn't trust you, if the staff doesn't trust you, they can't throw you out there. You never saw him again, right? Like once you lose that trust, it's hard to get back. But once, on the other side of it, once you have it, it's tough to lose it. Like, I mean, they're going to go with the people that they trust. They're going to play the people that they know in moments have the most opportunity of not letting them down, right? And
you could kind of tell at the beginning of the season they kind of trusted him because he played against Florida State, and then he had the 2 drops against Grambling. And then after that, it was like, where's Shelton Sampson? And I think after the 2 drops, it was kind of like you said, like, can I trust you? When I put you in the game, do you know where you're going to be? Do you know where you're supposed to be? And he was where he was supposed to be in both of those situations against Grambling. He just dropped the passes. And it's like, I need to be able to trust you to make that catch against Grambling.
Exactly.
Because when we get against Alabama, when we get against Ole Miss, we get against Mississippi State, I need you to make that catch. So dropping it against Grambling, now you got to sit down for the rest of the season. You might be a red shirt.
That's what it is. I mean, for all of these people, and now when there's money on the line with the players, I've seen conversations at high level. I mean, I saw John Brady and his staff talk about this every single night because their jobs were on the line, right? Like, I mean, they were talking about their livelihood. I mean, him, Butch Pierre, John Treelor, they were talking about making decisions, playing the right players, because if they don't, they could be out of work. And that was really kind of my first class seat of looking at and seeing the real raw conversations of what it really takes to play. Right? I mean, like, I can recall what Daryl Mitchell meant to John Brady and Butch Pierre in 2005 and 2006 when he was on the floor. I mean, they trusted their life with him. They would put the ball in his hands and say, you make the decision. That just doesn't happen, right? I mean, like, that doesn't just, you just don't snap your fingers and say, hey, kid, go bail us out. Go hit this game-winning shot. I mean, when it gets tight, you have to have people, who can I trust? Who's going to make the play? Who's going to be in the right position? Who knows what they're supposed to be doing? And, for a guy like Shelton Sampson, I think that there's been some real highs, but I mean, there's also been some moments where you're like, I wonder if we can trust that. And this happens with young players all the time. All the time this happens with young players.
Oh, especially for somebody coming in from Baton Rouge, going into your first game in Tiger Stadium, and you have an opportunity to make a touchdown catch and you don't. Like, I can understand he was probably the most nervous person in the building at that spot, like at that point in the game. Like that plays into it a little bit. So that's why you hate to see him not get another real opportunity, but the talent is undeniable.
Yeah. And that's the mental part about the game that I think you almost have to go through that to learn it, right? I mean,
Malik Neighbors.
Yeah. I mean, like it's something I know I talked to my son about already, as kind of the mental part of the game, because at some point, you're going to have to go through it. You're going to have to either it beats you or you're able to overcome the part that, when you lose confidence in sports, it's a hell of a gamble on whether or not you're going to get it back. That's why, to me, Malik Neighbors is such a dog.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, just such a competitive mental giant that if you go back to that Florida State game in his sophomore season where he muffs two punts and is able to get back out onto the field and on the last drive make 2 of the biggest catches of the game. I mean, there are so many people that say, I want that moment, but then in that moment say, holy shit, I don't want anything to do with this. This is way, way too bright. This stage is way too big. And, when you figure that out about somebody, that's when you realize that you're like, man, you got something. I know we've talked about the Landon Barone brings up a great one, Josh Williams. How much do you think the coaching staff trusts Josh Williams? If you looked at Caleb Jackson and Josh Williams in the locker room, you're a pro scout. You don't know anything about LSU football.
Never
seen a piece of film. Never been to any practices. Never saw a game. And I walk into the locker room and you show me, Coach, who's your running backs? You got this guy right here, Caleb Jackson. He's a sophomore coach. And then I got Josh Williams right here. He's a fifth-year senior. You'd probably say, let me see the film on Jackson.
Can I see Jackson's film right now?
Let me see the film, Joe.
You got some on your phone?
Yeah, let me see that stuff on Jackson. But then you would say, well, here's the biggest moments of the games.
Yeah.
Here's the biggest moments that LSU needs to know that they're going to make a play. Right? Like, they got to have a play. Who's on the field? Josh Williams.
Coach, you could go back to, you could even go back to the Bama run. The touchdown.
Absolutely.
In overtime.
What do you mean? When he decleats
When
two people?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like
you could go back to that.
That might be the first play on the highlight film.
Right. And
It's not
that's
the
it
Florida
right
one.
there. Like, that's the trust.
But
But
like,
I mean, that's the first one because it happened before the
those
Florida
two
one.
Yeah.
pop. The Bama and Florida play pop. There's so many third downs and second downs that you didn't even recognize him picking up, chipping, making the right play in the right place at the right time, making a catch, getting 2 yards when they needed a yard and a half, getting
Staying
4
in
yards.
bounds.
I mean, a protection on the backside of Jaden Daniels to keep him alive for 2 more seconds. Things that you don't, he didn't decleat somebody, right? I mean, Daniels didn't score a game-winning touchdown to beat Bama on it. I mean, it's like there are moments that you're just like, wow, look at that. He's in the right place. He's doing the right things. He hit the right guy. He hit the right hole. He caught the pass. And when it comes down to it, you're like, Coach, 4th and 1, who you want? Williams, get in there.
18.
You know what I mean? Like, we got Jackson right here. Give me Josh. Just because, our jobs are on the line, fellas.
And you saw that against Ole Miss when you saw Caleb Jackson get in there for one play and Frank has even gone hand up. We were trying to shift running backs in and out, and it ended up being a swing pass to Caleb Jackson. I didn't want him in that moment because that was his first live rep of the game, and he ends up dropping a swing pass off his hands. And those are the type of things that, if we had the right guy in for that particular play or for that particular instance, that's where you're like, Josh, get in. And that's why I think it's huge he's even coming back because there was such I don't want to say, there was a pretty big contingency that said, man, that's a lot of time for a college running back to play in college. And instead it's, he's still got a lot of tread on the tire because the way that Frank loves to use running backs, you're able to kind of keep the carries at, a stable rate. So it's not, he played 5 years and played 5 years of college. There's no chance you're going to take a chance on him in the NFL draft. I think it's the opposite where, God, he's been steadily consistent at LSU for so long, and now I know exactly what I'm getting. Never heard a bad thing about him. Comes in, plays at LSU, wants to come back and play again for LSU because I think he sees they're building something special. And Cordell put it in the chat, I think there's pretty much no doubt he'll be 18.
He should be.
I think he's earned that right as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he fits the mold of the number and feels like a prime candidate for somebody who's going to wear it. But, all of this, I think you asked me about Shelton Sampson. I mean, it just goes back to trust. It all goes back to coaches, teammates, being able to trust each other in situations where, hey, man, I know you've got the best interest of the team, right? Like, I know you're going to make the play that's the best interest of the team, and if it doesn't come to you, if it doesn't include you, if it doesn't use you, you're good with it. It's all good, right? And it's nothing against you.